thanks to taxes, directly deducted from our salaries. And then again, when we pay GST on anything and everything. So to the income taxpayers, how are you feeling after today's budget? Many of you would have been waiting with bated breath, eagerly watching for some relief. Well, guess what? Your wishes have been granted, albeit underwhelmingly. First, let's talk about the new tax slabs. Though there's a disclaimer here, this only applies to the new tax regime. There are two tax regimes in India, the old and the new. They operate simultaneously. People can opt for either, but the government prefers that you move to the new one, which is why they only tweak the new tax regime. And here are those much wanted tweaks. For people earning up to 3 lakh rupees per year, congratulations, your taxes remain the same at 0%. You only pay GST and a random cess on everything from oil to education to cleanliness. And that is something all of us must contribute to. But the people earning less than 3 lakhs a year can rest easy, knowing that the taxation stops there. After that, we come to the 3 to the 7 lakh bracket, 3 to 7 lakhs. Those 4 lakh additional rupees will be taxed at 5%. The rate hasn't changed, but the slab has been expanded. It's the same scenario with the new tax slab. 7 to 10 lakh rupees will be taxed at 10%. Earlier, this was for 6 to 9 lakhs. Now, income up to 10 lakhs is also taxed at 10%. The rest of the rates remain the same. Now, all of this may sound complicated, so I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. If your salary is up to 3 lakh rupees per year, not much changes for you. If it is up to 6 lakhs, nothing changes for you. But if it is above that, you get some relief. People who make 7 lakh and above now have to pay 5,000 rupees less per year. 5,000 rupees less per year, which comes to a whopping 416 rupees less per month. Quite the princely sum. It gets better for people who make 10 lakhs and more. They save 10,000 rupees every year, or about 833 rupees per month. That's almost 2 whole 500 rupee bills extra every single month. Whatever will you do with that massive bounty? Well, you could spend it and contribute even more to GST collections, or you could invest it in mutual funds or stocks or some other instrument. It's a way to increase your wealth and contribute to the government coffers yet again. Because today, both the short-term and long-term capital gains taxes were raised. The short-term capital gains tax is now 20%, up from the earlier 15%. So whatever sum you invest, if you want to cash in your earnings in under a year, 1/5 goes to the government. However, if you decide to wait, if you hold on to your investments for more than a year, you will pay the long-term capital gains tax instead. That is also up from 10% to 12.5%. So the government will pocket 1/8 of your earnings. Doesn't that feel good? Knowing that you're contributing to the nation's growth every single step of the way. You see that bridge in Bihar? The one getting washed away every monsoon? Take solace in knowing that you are the one paying for it. And what about those hybrid roads/rivers in Mumbai? You, dear income taxpayer, are the proud funder of this world-renowned infrastructure. This is the government's revenue breakup, its sources of funding. Look at the biggest contributors. 27% comes from borrowings and other liabilities, and then it is us, the income taxpayers. The 2% of us who pay income tax. We alone provide the government with 19% of its total revenue. We contribute more than corporations. They pay 18%. Income tax is at 19%. Add our GST contributions, our cut of customs duties for imported goods, our share of excise duties, and what do you get? About 2% of the population being bled dry to keep the country going. That, dear taxpayers, is our contribution to the country. We pay taxes when we earn money, when we spend money, and even when we invest money. Wherever we go, whatever we do, the government has one hand in our back pocket. So perhaps it's time to take a closer look at where your money is going and demand accountability for every fallen bridge, for every flooded road, for every collapsed airport. Because if we are paying for all of this, We might as well get our money's worth. So as the dust settled on yet another budget day, the government is busy lauding it, the opposition is busy slamming it, and India's taxpayers are back to their daily routines. They may not have gotten much, but that did not stop them from getting creative. India's middle class found solace on the internet with a twist of humor. In our next report, we bring you the reactions to Budget 2024 and, of course, the Meme Fest.
As Nirmala Sitharaman entered the parliament, India's middle class were on the edge of their seats. Their eyes gleamed with hope, their ears pricked up for the sweet sound of tax cuts or even some bare minimum subsidies. But soon enough, those dreams were relegated to the realm of fantasy. The middle class got to hold the popcorn, but they're not getting to eat any.
Is still in the grip of...
The middle class are often like a middle child in a large family, underappreciated, perpetually overlooked, and with no gains. The government may have introduced new tax slabs, but people are asking, what exactly is the difference? It's the same middle-class mirage every year. There are hopes of tax cuts, of reliefs, of subsidies. The real budget isn't that creative, but the memes on the internet definitely are. For some, the budget didn't even affect them, but that didn't stop them from joining the Meme Fest. However, there are two states that stole the spotlight, Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. They are ruled by NDA allies and they got a significant chunk of the budget allocation, and that sparked a wave of memes on social media. India's opposition was quick to notice this too. Leader of the opposition Rahul Gandhi said that Budget 2024 was aimed at appeasing cronies with no relief for the common Indian. He called it the Kursi Bajao budget, which means saving the chair. Other opposition leaders too slammed the government for prioritizing its own NDA allies and introducing a complicated tax regime.
अब मान लीजिए सरकार बचानी है तो अच्छी बात है कि बिहार को, आंध्र प्रदेश को कुछ विशेष पैकेज या विशेष योजनाओं से जोड़ा गया है, लेकिन उत्तर प्रदेश जैसा प्रदेश जो प्रधानमंत्री देता है, क्या वहाँ के किसान के लिए कुछ बड़े फैसले हैं? किसान की फसल की पैदावार, उसकी कीमत के लिए क्या कोई इंतजाम है?
Two tax regime is a bad idea. If you want to introduce a new tax regime, you should have announced it well in advance and say, from this financial year, everybody has to move to a new tax regime. A two-tax regime is unacceptable and a bad idea. It will lead to tax arbitration, and people will be confused whether they should remain in the old regime or switch over to the new regime.
The Congress even called out the government for taking a leaf out of their 2024 manifesto. The party said the government's internship program was based on Congress's Pehli Naukri Pakki, which was a proposed apprenticeship program. So it's been quite a divisive budget. The opposition is slamming it for not being enough. The middle class is left in a familiar position with hopes and dreams for next year. And the internet finds itself inevitably in another wave of tweets and memes.
Urban land-related actions. Land records in urban areas will be digitized with GIS mapping. An IT-based system for property record administration, updating, and tax administration will be established. These will also facilitate improving the financial position of urban local bodies. Labor-related reforms, services to labor. Our government will facilitate the provision of a wide array of services to labor, including those for employment and skilling. A comprehensive integration of e-Shram portal with other portals will facilitate such one-stop solution. Open architecture databases for the rapidly changing labor market, skill requirements, and available job roles, and a mechanism to connect job aspirants with potential employers and skill providers will be covered in these services. Shram Suvidha and Samadhan portal. Shram Suvidha and Samadhan portal will be revamped to enhance ease of compliance for industry and trade. Capital and entrepreneurship related reforms, financial sector vision and strategy. For meeting financing needs of the economy, our government will bring out a financial sector vision and strategy document to
You return home after a long day. You kick back and turn on the TV, but you can't decide what to watch. We've all been there. So let me give you a suggestion. Just watch the US election cycle. Forget Game of Thrones. Forget Succession. This is the real deal. Just look at the storyline. Donald Trump got shot. Joe Biden dropped out. Kamala Harris took over. And now Republicans say Biden is dead. That's enough material for 10 seasons. But in the US, it's just 10 days on the campaign trail. Let's look at the latest episode. Kamala Harris is gaining momentum. She's been reaching out to Democratic delegates. All of them had promised to support Biden. So Harris needs to sway them. And looks like she's already done it. You need 1,976 delegates to snatch the party nomination. Kamala Harris has more than 2,600. The next step is the convention. It is scheduled for the 19th of August in Chicago. If these numbers hold, Kamala Harris will be the nominee. Talk about a swift turnaround. Biden dropped out on Sunday and Harris has hit her target on Tuesday. The question is how? A, because she had Biden's endorsement, so those delegates had an easy choice, and B, because of the party elite. More and more top Democrats are endorsing Harris. The latest is Nancy Pelosi. She is the former Speaker of the US House, also a very powerful figure in the Democratic Party. So the nomination now won't be a problem for Kamala Harris. It's already in the bag. Which brings us to the election. Can she beat Donald Trump? On Monday, Harris spoke at the Democratic campaign office. Her first campaign speech after taking over from Biden. Everyone was looking out for clues, and they got one. Harris went after Trump's criminal record.
I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California, and before that I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
So Harris has revealed her hand. It was really a no-brainer. Kamala Harris used to serve as a prosecutor. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. It's a strategy that writes itself. But strategy alone does not win elections. For that, you need money and support. The first one, money, does not seem to be a problem. Kamala Harris has inherited Biden's war chest. Plus, she's on a fundraising spree. Guess how much money she's raised since Sunday? More than $100 million. So clearly, Democratic supporters are enthusiastic. Even celebrities are joining in. Spike Lee, John Legend, Mike Hamill, Cardi B, Viola Davis, and Mark Ruffalo. Now, Hollywood support could be key for Harris. They're often called an ATM for Democrats. But more importantly, they could add momentum to the campaign. You see, Trump has been campaigning since last year. Kamala Harris only has 100 days left. So she has a lot of ground to cover. Enter celebrity supporters and the message is amplified. The Harris campaign knows this. On Sunday, British pop star Charli XCX endorsed Harris. And she did so in a weird way by writing, "Harris is Brat." Now, Brat doesn't mean what you think here. It's the name of Charli's hit album. So she was actually endorsing Harris. That post has gotten 48 million views on X. It's been liked more than 300,000 times. So the campaign immediately latched onto it. They have fully embraced the Brat tag. And what does that mean? What does the tag mean? Someone who doesn't fit the typical gender stereotype, someone who's honest and blunt, someone who likes to party, and someone who's often messy, sort of like a good rebel. You can see why Kamala Harris is embracing this message. Neither Trump nor Biden could connect to young voters, but Harris can. So she's going all in with pop culture. What about the other side? The primary message from Trump and Vance is this: Biden was bad, Harris will be worse.
Now, history will remember Joe Biden as not just a quitter, which he is, but one of the worst presidents of the United States of America. But my friends, Kamala Harris is a million times worse, and everybody knows it.
There is a parallel campaign too, a lot of sexism, racism, and conspiracy theories. J.D. Vance is part of it too. An old video of his is going viral. Vance can be heard calling Harris a childless cat lady. Listen to this.
Is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
Of course, this is a bitter campaign, so things will get ugly, but attacking someone's gender or race is just pathetic. Harris wasn't exactly a popular Veep. Her track record is also questionable, so why not focus on that? Plus, what's with all the conspiracy theories? The latest one is that Joe Biden is dead. A lot of Republicans are pushing this theory. Why? Because he hasn't been seen since the weekend. I'll admit it is strange. As a US president, you cannot go missing for days. You must make appearances, especially after dropping bombshell decisions. But common sense says Biden is not dead. In fact, Biden joined Harris's campaign event on phone call.
It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. So do we. And we do. Everybody here does.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe. Oh.
Exciting for the neutrals, not so much for Americans. This is definitely shaping up to be a great fight. We can't wait for the results. Or should I say, the series finale. Let's turn to the war in Gaza. It has led to something unprecedented among Palestinians: unity. And guess who's forged this unity? China. I know it sounds confusing, so let me explain. Palestinians control two pieces of land: Gaza, which is ruled by Hamas, and the West Bank, which is ruled by the Palestinian Authority, or PA. Now, the PA is controlled by a political party. It's called Fatah. This is the party of late Yasser Arafat. Fatah and Hamas have been rivals since the year 2007. That's when they fought a civil war in Gaza. Hamas calls for violence against Israel, but Fatah prefers politics. And their rivalry has weakened the Palestinian cause. But maybe not for long, because Hamas and Fatah have signed a unity deal. Both groups were in China for talks. They held discussions for 3 days, and at the end of it, they signed a deal.
We are signing an agreement for national unity to say that the way to continue this path is our national unity, and that's why we are adhering to our national unity. We call for it, and we won't let anything affect this national unity.
They're calling it the Beijing Declaration. It's been in the works for a while. China first hosted Hamas and Fatah in April. That meeting laid the groundwork for this deal. But what does it say? Mainly 4 things. Number 1, creating an interim unity government for Palestine. Number 2, creating a unified Palestinian leadership. Number 3, holding fresh elections. And number 4, a declaration of unity against Israel. Now, these are all big decisions. Hamas and Fatah are agreeing to share power to rule together. If this experiment succeeds, it could boost the Palestinian movement. But what's in it for China? For starters, image building. Beijing wants to position itself as a negotiator, as an agent of peace. We saw that last year as well. They brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now they have united Fatah and Hamas. So clearly, China is improving its mediating chops. Secondly, it creates goodwill for China. Arab states have long tried to mediate between Hamas and Fatah, but none of them succeeded. So chances are they will welcome China's effort, because thanks to Beijing, the old rivalry seems to be over. And they're not done yet. China's foreign minister presided over the talks and the signing. Afterwards, he had a message. China is ready to push for peace in West Asia.
China is willing to strengthen communication and coordination with all relevant parties to jointly implement the Beijing Declaration reached today and to play a constructive role in maintaining peace and stability in the Middle East.
Could that be China's next target, a peace deal between Israel and Hamas? Well, that depends on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He is in the United States right now. He will meet Joe Biden later today. And tomorrow he will address the US Congress. Now, Biden did not invite Netanyahu. The Republican House Speaker invited him. In fact, Netanyahu and Biden have been growing apart. Biden wants him to take a ceasefire deal, but Netanyahu wants to push on with the war. The question is, will the campaign chaos in Washington affect any of this? Well, two things are possible. Biden doesn't have a campaign to run, so he can put more pressure on Netanyahu. No worries about Jewish voters. That's one possibility. But Biden's replacement is his vice president. So his actions will affect Kamala Harris too. And that may weaken his hand against Netanyahu. So which way will Joe Biden go? We'll know during the press conference later today. But Netanyahu did drop a hint in Washington. He said a hostage deal was near.
We are determined to bring them all back. The conditions to bring them back are ripening, for the simple reason that we are putting very, very strong pressure on Hamas and we are seeing a certain change, and I think this change will grow and we intend to do it. This is a war goal.
It's a contrast, isn't it? Netanyahu and Biden at odds. Meanwhile, China uniting Fatah and Hamas. It's definitely a diplomatic coup for Beijing. But one big worry still remains. Will this unity deal survive? Here's why we ask. You see, Fatah and Hamas are fundamentally opposites. Plus, there is a lot of global opposition to Hamas. They, after all, carried out the October 7th attack. They slaughtered innocent Israeli citizens. So anyone who comes close to Hamas will feel the heat. Does Fatah really want to risk that? Also, what happens when Hamas launches another attack? Will Fatah stand by and condone it? Or will they distance themselves? These are all concerns around this unity deal. As for the US, all is not lost. A Hamas-Israel peace deal remains the holy grail. Whoever seals that will get the bragging rights. Let's talk about the European Union now. It is boycotting Hungary and its leader Viktor Orban. Brussels is upset over Orban's recent peace mission. He visited Ukraine and Russia. Orban is trying to play peacemaker and broker a truce between them, Ukraine and Russia. But Brussels did not approve of these trips. It says Viktor Orban is engaging in rogue diplomacy. And what is their response? The bloc's top diplomat has asked EU nations to boycott a meeting in Hungary. Instead, Brussels is hosting a rival summit. Our next report has more details.
Orban had it all planned. He traveled to Ukraine, Russia, and China. He shook hands with all the leaders. He even had Hollywood-style videos made for this so-called peace mission. Orban wanted to make a statement that he'd arrived at the world stage, declaring himself Europe's de facto leader. Hungary currently holds the presidency of the European Council. It's a rotating seat, meaning everyone gets a turn to serve on this post. But Orban is taking this job a bit more seriously than his EU counterparts. He's using this opportunity to play peacemaker and negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine. In that spirit, he advised Ukraine to accept a ceasefire.
I asked the President Volodymyr Zelensky to think about whether we could reverse the order and speed up peace talks with making a ceasefire first.
But Brussels didn't take kindly to the proposal. They were quick to give it a cold shoulder. Turns out, Orbán didn't bother to discuss his peace plan with his European counterparts. The Hungarian leader bypassed the European Union, as well as the United States. Instead of Washington, D.C., Orbán took his peace mission to Mar-a-Lago, where he met with the Republican candidate Donald Trump. Orbán thinks that Trump is in a better position to end the war in Ukraine.
Hála jó Istennek, hogy nem engedte, hogy megöljék.
Thank God that Trump did not allow himself to be killed. I hope that this means that God has plans with the president. And what other plan could God have in such warlike times than someone bringing peace at last? And he was the president of peace.
This time, Orbán really has crossed the line, according to Brussels. They've started a mission to boycott him. Orbán was supposed to host a meeting in Budapest in his official role. These were informal talks. Foreign and defense ministers from Europe were expected to attend. Now they'll be jetting off to Brussels instead. The EU's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, is hosting a rival meeting there. He's making moves to shut down Orbán's peace mission.
I will call for a restricted session, ministers only, in order to discuss what has happened in the last weeks, from the visits to Moscow, to Kiev, and to Peking from Prime Minister Orbán, and the speeches at the United Nations Security Council from his foreign minister, accusing the European Union to be the country or the union that pushes for war. This is completely unacceptable.
Brussels hopes that this rival meeting will show European unity. Instead, it's likely to expose Europe's differences, with Orbán and Brussels heading straight for a showdown.
Now let's turn our attention to Africa, to the country of Uganda. Uganda is home to almost 50 million people, and at least some of those people seem to have been inspired by their neighbors in Kenya. Because like the Kenyans, the Ugandans have also decided to protest. There was supposed to be a massive demonstration today. Young Ugandans had planned to march to their parliament building in the capital, Kampala. They wanted to protest against endemic corruption in their country. Their target was a senior government official, Anita Among, Uganda's Speaker of Parliament.
Anita must resign! 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 Anita must resign!
I want Anita Among to resign. She has stolen from this country. These resources are not hers. This is taxpayers' money. I am urging all the young people out there in Uganda to come out in large numbers and protest.
The protesters believe that Uganda's parliament speaker is corrupt, and they aren't the only ones. Anita Among has been under the scanner globally. The US sanctioned her earlier this year for quote-unquote significant corruption. The UK did the same. Among was accused of misusing public resources and diverting materials from Uganda's neediest communities. That is what the US said. And it seems that the people of Uganda agree.
We are tired of corruption and it has to be resigned. We are tired. No drugs in the hospitals, bad roads. Kampala is the pothole capital. Bad roads, it's because of corruption.
The protest in Uganda seems to have been inspired by the recent demonstrations in Kenya. Kenyans have been protesting for weeks on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now the Ugandans are following suit. Protesters in both countries called for a march to parliament to put pressure on the authorities. And both movements have been organized at the grassroots, mostly by young people or the Gen Z. Those are the similarities. But while they are neighbors, Uganda and Kenya are very different countries. Kenya is a democracy. Uganda has been ruled by one man for almost 4 decades. This man, Yoweri Museveni. He became president in 1986 and he's been there ever since 1986. His son is now the chief of Uganda's defense forces and seems to be the heir apparent. Does that sound like a democratic setup to you? So you won't be surprised to learn that Uganda does not like protests. When the demonstrations were announced, the government swung into action. Museveni warned the protesters that they were quote-unquote playing with fire. The police said they would not tolerate disorderly conduct. And they started making preparations for today. Both the police and the military were deployed in the capital. There were security patrols, roads were checked. Kampala looked like a war zone. Politicians from an opposition party were arrested. Their party headquarters were surrounded to stop the protesters from getting any support. But despite all of this, some Ugandans still came out today and they faced the full force of the regime. There was police brutality. Dozens of protesters were detained. Some others seem to have been abducted outright. All this sends a chilling message to the protesters that Uganda will not tolerate dissent, no matter the reason. Museveni will not budge. Till today's crackdown, today's crackdown end the protests before they truly begin? Or will it spark an even bigger fire? I guess we'll find out in a few days. Now let's talk about something that could be Hollywood's next big hit. Cocaine sharks. It may sound like another Jaws installment, but this is real. And swimming near the coast of Brazil. 13 sharks there have tested positive for cocaine. It's the first such study and the results are quite dramatic. Now the question is, how did cocaine enter the bodies of sharks? Experts have a few theories, but all of them point to just one culprit: humans. Our next report explains.
It's a plot twist that would make Hollywood screenwriters blush. Sharks off the coast of Brazil have tested positive for cocaine. Yes, you heard that right, cocaine. These aquatic predators have taken a dive into the drug trade. Not as smugglers or victims of cartels, but as unwitting participants. It started when marine biologists tested 13 Brazilian sharp-nosed sharks. They were taken from the shores near Rio de Janeiro. What they find was literally jaw-dropping. High levels of cocaine were detected in all 13 sharks, especially in their muscles and livers. The concentration was a staggering 100 times higher than previously reported in other marine creatures. So what explains this? Does the world's apex predator have an addiction problem? Do they need rehab with motivational posters saying, "Just keep swimming"? Or is it something more? Now, experts don't know for sure yet, but they believe sharks are unwilling participants in Brazil's drug trade. One theory says the cocaine has made its way to the waters via illegal drug labs, or even the excrement of drug users. Other theories say cocaine lost or dumped by traffickers at sea could be the culprit. Either way, the sharks are consuming it, which could be potentially worrying. All the females in the study were pregnant, but it's yet to be seen how it will affect the fetuses. The scientists haven't noticed anything strange yet, but they believe it's affecting their eyesight. Now, this isn't the first time drug compounds were found in ocean water. Last year, benzoylecgonine was detected in samples taken off the coast of the UK. It's a byproduct of cocaine metabolism. Other sea creatures like crabs, shrimp and oysters have had traces of cocaine, amphetamines and MDMA in their systems. So it turns out that the ocean is becoming the world's largest drug den. But it's also a surreal reminder that human actions have far-reaching impacts, even on creatures we don't think we affect. These sharks are caught in a global environmental crisis. So next time you're enjoying a beach holiday in Brazil, don't worry about the sharks. They're probably more interested in their next fix than in you.
in terms of size, capacity, and skills. This will set the agenda for the next 5 years and guide the work of the government, regulators, financial institutions, and market participants. Taxonomy for climate finance. We will develop taxonomy for climate finance for enhancing the availability of capital for climate adaptation and mitigation. This will support achievement of the country's climate commitments and green transition. Variable capital company structure. We will seek the required legislative approval for providing an efficient and flexible mode for financing leasing of aircrafts and ships and pooled funds of private equity through a variable company structure. Foreign direct investments. The rules and regulations for foreign direct investment and overseas investments will be simplified to 1. Facilitate foreign direct investments, 2. Nudge prioritization, and 3. Promote currency for overseas investment. NPS Vatsalya. NPS Vatsalya, a plan for contribution by parents and guardians for minors, will be started.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Paris was witness to a celestial treat when the moon passed through the Olympic rings on the Eiffel Tower. And baggage piles up at the Denver airport as Delta cancels 600 flights amid cyber outage.
Of majority, the plan can be converted seamlessly into a normal NPS account. Use of technology. We have successfully used technology for improving productivity and bridging inequality in our economy during the past 10 years. Public investment in digital infrastructure and innovations by the private sector have helped in improving access of all citizens, particularly the common people, to market resources, education, health and services. We will step up adoption of technology towards digitalization of the economy. Ease of doing business. For enhancing ease of doing business, we are already working on the Jan Vishwas Bill 2.0. Further, states will be incentivized for implementation of the business reforms, action plans, and digitalization. Data and statistics for improving data governance, collection.
Hello and welcome to the Late Night Edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. The Supreme Court has rejected demands for cancelling the NEET exams after the paper leak controversy, ladies and gentlemen. The top court ruled that there is absence of sufficient evidence